My people have a very old myth, one from long before we traveled the stars, from when we first gathered around an open fire. It tells of creatures wandering the endless sands of my home. They conceal their faces because they are not of this world. They would carry a simple dim lantern. If you ever got lost in the sands back then, it would surely be the end of you. But sometimes a little light would emerge in the dark of the night, bobbing towards you. A cloaked figure would emerge from the dark and hold out a strange hand. If you gave it something you had made, it would accept it and help you. If you were starving, it would offer you food or drinks before leading you back to where you could find your way home. Many species have similar stories. It makes sense, really. Holding on to that tiny piece of hope, you know. But out among the stars, it is not just a story. Those strange wisps of light that suddenly appear in the dark are there to lead ships away from a danger they may not have noticed. Have you seen them? Do you know why spacers have a box next to the airlock that they never move or open? The box that not even the most desperate pirate will touch. Do you know what's inside of it? Alcohol. Refined and flavored in any way imaginable, carefully crafted and aged by the ship's crew. It is toxic to most, but it is not meant for most. It is meant for the void shepherds. Have you heard about ships returning from long out, with drives cobbled together in impossible ways? Repairs that should not hold but still did. Repairs that got them back from certain death. From accidents that should have left them lost and helpless in deep space. They never tell what happened apart from, got some help and made it home. How about long-lost ships that are occasionally discovered floating in the dark, cold and lifeless from an accident that claimed the crew? Did you know that many of these are recovered with every crew member accounted for? Even though whatever happened should have ejected at least some of them, never to be found. Yet they had seemingly been carefully laid to rest in the remains of their ships. Those kinds of stories have one thing in common. The box at the airlock is always open and it's always empty. It's rare now, I know, but there was a time when getting lost or immobile in deep space was a very real risk. Back when communication was neither as fast nor far-reaching as is now. I have been stuck out there long ago. FTL drive core got fried somehow while jumping between two systems. Dumped me and my hauler in the middle of nowhere, in the dark between two systems. Without the drive core, it would have taken me generations to get close enough to a shipping lane to send a distress signal that somebody might hear. I was undeniably going to die. I hailed for countless cycles, just hoping beyond reason that somebody might pass by close enough. I considered venting the atmosphere and ending it on my own terms many times. But I didn't. I kept hailing the void, and then it answered. A brilliant streak of violet and gold appeared in the deep black. As it faded, a tiny orb of light moved towards my ship. It seemed like it was bobbing. As it got closer, I could make out a silhouette of a strange craft, lit up by the lights from my ship. No sensor noticed it, but I saw it. It almost seemed to flutter like a dark cloth in a breeze, light streaming from what I assume was the single cockpit. It connected to my airlock and I heard the locks clicking, but my ship seemed to be oblivious. Then came a knock, like the courtesy announcement before entering another's home. Stunned and dazed, I just opened the airlock without a second thought, and I met one. I met a void shepherd. It ducked under the airlock and walked right up to me, its movements graceful but strangely alien. Its voice was a rough mix of synthetic and organic in a very melodic way, the face obscured by a tinted visor. "Are you hurt?" it asked in perfectly understandable standard speak. Close to fainting, sure, but I was not hurt, so I just pointed towards the propulsion bay and managed to stammer out, "Core is fried." With that, it ran a hand with short, delicate digits over the ID plate next to the airlock and disappeared into the propulsion bay, leaving me frozen at the airlock. I damn near jumped through a viewport when it suddenly walked right past me back into its ship. It was gone for what felt like a very long time before returning, carrying a basket of parts and a belt with tools around its waist. It went straight back to the bay and began working, judging by the noise. I never saw what it was doing. Too shocked to move, honestly, but I heard a sudden sharp hammering sound. A long moment of silence, then it barked something in a language I have never heard before, or since. Then another sharp clang and my ship shuddered as the drive core whirred to life. I dared to peek into the bay, but by that time it had already gathered its things back up and was wiping its hands on a simple piece of cloth. I silently followed it back to the airlock where it stopped at the box, putting down the basket of parts and opening the lid. As it took out one of the almost half-a-generation-old amber bottles of tanre root spiced alcohol, it turned towards me. "May I?" it asked. "Of course. I made that on my first trip after getting my own ship," I blurted out like some proud adolescent. As it opened the bottle, it straightened up to its full height and slid the visor up just enough to reveal pale lips and took a sip of the bottle. It seemed to savor the alcohol for a moment before sliding the visor back down and turning to me again. "Excellent. Can you write a description of how this was prepared?" it asked. Flustered, I frantically turned to a console and began to type, forgetting all manners. When I was satisfied with the description, I finally looked around and noticed that I was alone at the airlock. I looked back at the console. The text was gone and words began appearing as if someone was typing in front of me. It just read, "A route back has been plotted. Be proud of that recipe. A gift for a gift. It's time we told somebody. Be safe." Confused, I looked around and noticed the box was open and all 3 bottles were gone. Next to the box sat a small crystal cube covered in a form of writing. I felt the decoupling, and when I reached a viewport moments later, all I saw was that colored streak fading in the dark void. The route it had plotted took me directly to a refit station. Never had to repair that driver since, just a whack with something heavy from time to time. I got some scholar friends really excited when they got to look at that cube. It took them a long time, but they translated some of it. Allegedly, it reads, "We made a terrible mistake. While our planet was dying, some of us fled. To find a solution, we claimed. Honestly, we were just afraid. We tinkered and toyed with the very essence of ourselves, under the guise of finding a cure. When we finally gathered the courage to return, it was far too late. Our species, humanity, and our planet were long dead. We were not. We had promised to return to help, but in the end we left them alone and afraid in the cold, empty void. Those of us that remain can never be forgiven for that. What we did to ourselves made us eternal, but unable to ever remake humanity. We will probably never find rest in death for our sins. So please let us do what we can to ensure that no being will ever be left alone and afraid in the cold, empty void, waiting for help that will never come. Do not seek power, it blinds. Seek compassion. Do not seek immortality, it lasts too long. Seek life. Please accept what little aid we can offer while we mourn. A toast for lost Terra soul. I do hope they find peace one day, but I'm alive today because of that void shepherd." I gave the cube to the scientist, of course, but they made me a beautiful replica. Sits right next to my seat now, a slightly less aged batch of tanre root alcohol at the airlock. 4 bottles this time, and the only ship I will ever trust to get me through the void. Renamed in their honor, after the words I heard from the propulsion bay. "My dear fucking piece of us yet."